Hello everyone and welcome to the Ratio Christi South Africa YouTube channel. For those of you who are unfamiliar with what we do, Ratio Christi is a university campus apologetics ministry that aims to equip students and faculty with good historical, scientific, as well as philosophical arguments for the truth of Christianity. On this YouTube channel, we invite leading scholars from various disciplines around the world to come and present evidence, arguments to defend the truth claims of Christianity. Over the next few weeks, we'll be having a few of the reasons to believe scholars, including Dr. Jeff Zweering, Dr. Faz Rana, and we'll be discussing topics such as the multiverse, the origin of life, and historical Adam. If you like what you see tonight, please subscribe to our channel. And as you know, we are a non-profit organization. So if you feel in your heart you want to donate to our cause, please go to our website. There's a link there and you can enter your details and donate something to us. Right. So tonight we have the privilege of having Dr. Hugh Ross with us. Dr. Ross is an astronomer and also founder and president of Reasons to Believe, an organization dedicated to demonstrating the capability of science and Christianity. Dr. Ross holds a degree in physics from the University of British Columbia and a MS and PhD in astronomy from the University of Toronto. He later continued research on quasars and galaxies as a postdoctoral fellow at Caltech. Dr. Ross has made countless media appearances, including on the Dennis Prager Show, Fox News, the 700 Club, the Eddie Metaxas Show, and Coast to Coast AM with George Noory, and obviously now on our very famous YouTube channel as well. He has also appeared in numerous magazines and news articles such as Christianity Today, Charisma Magazine, and the Wall Street Journal. Outside of RTB, Dr. Ross teaches as an adjunct faculty member at both A.W. Tozer Seminary as well as Southern Evangelical Seminary. He also serves as a minister at the local church where he conducts a weekly apologetics class. Dr. Ross lives in Southern California with his wife Kathy and their two sons. So a very warm welcome to Dr. Ross, speaking to us live today from California in the USA. It is really an honor to have you here as our guest tonight. The topic for tonight's discussion is why the universe is the way that it is. Dr. Ross will be attempting to answer this question in his presentation tonight, and I'm sure his presentation will be filled with lots of information, scientific facts, and so forth. Dr. Ross will be speaking for about 40-45 minutes, and it will be followed up with a Q&A. So for our live audience on YouTube, please feel free to post any question at any time during the presentation. At the end, it will be forwarded to me, and I will ask any amount that we get time for to Dr. Ross. So, without any further ado, let me hand over to Dr. Ross to continue tonight's presentation.
Well, thank you, and welcome to all of you. And I've had the privilege of speaking on over 300 different university campuses throughout the world, including 3 trips I made to South Africa. So all of you that are part of Ratio Christi South Africa, it's great to be ministering again in your wonderful country. And what I'm going to do is share screen. So, and incidentally, we actually have some South Africans that are part of the Sunday class that was mentioned. That's at paradoxes.org. We now do it as a Zoom webinar meeting throughout the world. So if you go to paradoxes.org, you can participate in that along with other South Africans. But let me share screen here so that you can see my visuals. Okay, all of you should be seeing my first slide. It's got a starry background. And if you don't get a chance to ask your question today, I do have a Facebook and Twitter page where I do take questions. So feel free to post questions there. And Reasons to Believe does have a 24/7 YouTube channel. And every day we're putting up new video features there. So you can subscribe for free and you'll be apprised of those new video offerings that are there. And our website is reasons.org. And what I'm going to be speaking about today is this book, Why the Universe is the Way It Is. And you can get a free chapter of that book by going to reasons.org/Ross. We've also created a small group video series that you can, it's called If God Made the Universe. And so if you want to take your time going through the content through a series of 8 20-minute videos, you can get this feature from us at reasons.org. And I want to begin with this passage from 1 Peter 3:15. Always be prepared to give an answer for everyone who asks you for the reason that the hope that you have, but do this with gentleness, respect, and a clear conscience. And, we wound up actually writing a book making the point that if you will prepare sound reasons for your faith and hope in Jesus Christ and are able to deliver those reasons with gentleness and respect, you will see God supernaturally bringing people to you that God has prepared in advance to hear and respond to those reasons. And I'm just going to share one story that's out of this book that we wrote, Always Be Ready. And it concerns an event that happened to me. It started in the San Francisco airport, and the flight was delayed. And finally, they called my name, and I was worried that I was going to get bumped from the flight. But they said, Mr. Ross, are you traveling alone? I said, I am. Can we change your seat? We have a family and needs to sit together. I said, you can put me anywhere you want in the airplane. So they gave me a new ticket, and it was for a first class seat. So first time I got to fly first class. But as I sat down, a gentleman sat down beside me, and he introduced himself as a quantum physicist. And he also said that he was an atheist, that he was from Germany. And I thought, this is strange. This is a total stranger, and he's introducing himself as an atheist right out of the gun. But I found that's not too uncommon for researchers from Germany. And so he said, well, who are you? And I said, well, I'm not a quantum physicist. I'm an astrophysicist, and I'm not from Germany. I'm from Canada, and I'm not an atheist. I'm a Christian. And he said, this is going to be a really interesting flight. And he started to ask me a number of questions. In fact, during that 2-hour flight, he asked me 8 questions. And I'm just going to review for you a few of the questions that he asked me and what happened as a result of him asking those questions. The first question he posed to me is, okay, if there is a God, it seems like the universe is incredibly large and massive. If there is this God, then why all these useless stars and galaxies? And so I had a chance to describe to him, there's a reason why the universe is as massive as it is, where it contains 200 billion galaxies and 50 billion trillion stars. But I made the point that the universe's mass determines the makeup of its elements. In fact, this showed up in a paper that was published in Nature just yesterday, a new discovery basically making the point that only a universe of a certain mass will give us the makeup of elements. And the reason why is that the greater the cosmic mass density, the more hydrogen in the universe that's fused into helium during the first 4 minutes after the cosmic beginning. The universe starts off in Big Bang cosmology nearly infinitely hot, but it's expanding. As it expands, it gets cooler and cooler. And there's about a 20-second window, given the mass of the universe, where it's in the temperature range where hydrogen can be, through nuclear fusion, transformed into helium. Now, if you make the universe slightly less massive than what it is, then it expands so rapidly that it proceeds through that hydrogen fusion temperature range more quickly. And when it does, you don't get that much helium being transformed from the primordial hydrogen. In fact, you wind up getting so little helium being transformed from the hydrogen that future stars are unable to take that mixture of hydrogen and helium and use that to make any elements heavier than hydrogen and helium. So I explained to this quantum physicist from Germany, make the universe the tiniest bit less massive, and then the only elements that you have in the periodic table would be these two, hydrogen and helium. And yeah, that would sure make passing a chemistry class a lot easier. You basically would have no chemistry taking place except for a couple of molecules. And obviously, it would be a universe where there's no oxygen, no nitrogen, no carbon, and no possibility for physical life. Well, the quantum physicist said, well, what would happen if you make it slightly more massive? I said, make it slightly more massive, you get more helium being transformed from the primordial hydrogen. And then when the future stars form, they very quickly, at least on an astronomical time scale, take that primordial hydrogen and helium and transform it into nothing but elements that are heavier than iron. And again, in such a universe, you have no carbon, no oxygen, no nitrogen, no phosphorus, and no possibility for physical life. The universe must have exactly the mass that it has, no more, no less, in order to get a periodic table like this, where not only is life possible, advanced life is possible. You know, we're different from the bacteria in the sense that we need 22 of these elements that you see in the periodic table. Moreover, they must exist at precisely the right abundance level to make our existence possible. That requires a universe that's exactly the mass that it is, and also exactly the size that it is. Because that's another question my quantum physicist friend in the airplane was asking. Well, what about its size? And I made the point, well, notice that the mass of the universe also governs how big the universe is with respect to time. And basically made the point that, as you see here in these slides, if the universe expands rapidly, then you begin with galaxies jammed tightly together like they were 12 billion years ago, and then they expand and get farther and farther apart. But make the universe slightly less massive than what it is, then you have the universe expanding so rapidly that gravity can never collapse any of the primordial gas to make galaxies, stars, or planets. The universe would be forever nothing but diffuse gas, and there'd be no possibility for life. On the other hand, make the universe slightly more massive, the universe will be expanding so slowly that gravity will collect all the gas in the universe and compress it into nothing but black holes and neutron stars, where the density is so extremely high that molecules are impossible, even atoms are impossible, and that makes life impossible. And so the universe must be both exactly the right mass and exactly the right size, so that at a certain point in the history of the universe, you got a universe of galaxies, stars, and planets where the galaxies are the right distance apart from one another, not too far apart, not too close together, and likewise the stars are the right distance apart from one another, not too close and not too far to make advanced life possible. So the cosmic mass density, where the tiniest fraction greater or smaller, no life would be possible anytime, anywhere in the universe. And the fine tuning of the mass and the size of the universe is especially exquisite if you're talking about a universe with a capacity to have advanced life. Well, the third question the quantum physicist asked me on the airplane was, okay, why such an old universe? And, he was asking me what I thought the age of the universe was. And I says, well, our measurements tell us that it's 13.79 billion years old. And he says, that seems like a lot of time, given that we humans are only here for the past few tens of thousands of years. But I was able to explain to him that the age of the universe is a factor that determines whether we're able to see the whole history of the universe. And this was developed by an Australian astrophysicist, Charles Lineweaver, where he made the point that if we humans were here any earlier in the history of the universe, then light from the cosmic creation event, 13.8 billion years ago, hence 13.8 billion light years away, would not have adequate time to travel on the space surface of the universe and reach our telescopes. So, for example, if God created us 5 billion years ago, we'd only be able to see the last 2/3 of the history of the universe. And if God put us here any later, dark energy would be speeding the space surface of the universe, where we can see the cosmic creation event, away from us at greater than the velocity of light. So we humans are literally here at the only narrow time window where we can see 100% of the history of the universe and actually witness directly the cosmic creation event. Now, when I say that, some people say, well, surely you got to be exaggerating. I say, no. If you actually look at the polarization signal from maps of the cosmic background radiation, you're witnessing directly the state of the universe when it's 100 billionth of a trillionth of a trillionth of a second old. That's so close we can get to the cosmic creation event. And it's our capacity to be able to witness 100% of the history of the universe and actually see that close to the cosmic creation event where we get the most compelling and rigorous scientific evidence that there must be a God beyond space and time that created the universe and designed it for our specific benefit. So, only at 14 billion years roughly after the cosmic creation event can humans see all of cosmic history and directly witness the cosmic creation event. But there's a physical reason too why we have to be living in a universe that's 13.79 billion years old. And one has to do with uranium and thorium. I won't go into the details, but we are living on a planet that ranks as the uranium thorium champion of the universe. Our planet Earth has 630 times more thorium than what we would expect in any other rocky planet in the universe. And we have 340 times as much uranium. And one of the reasons why we have so much uranium and thorium is our planet Earth formed at that moment when uranium and thorium hit a peak abundance. Uranium and thorium only comes from supernova eruptions, but is radioactive, so it decays the moment that it is formed. And we have a huge abundance of supernova early in the history of the universe, then it begins to decline. But the bottom line is, a little bit after 9 billion years after the cosmic creation event, the uranium-thorium abundance of the universe hits a maximum. And that's exactly when our solar system formed. Our solar system formed at that moment when uranium and thorium hit a peak abundance. And without a huge abundance of uranium and thorium in the interior of the Earth, we wouldn't have a strong magnetic field to protect us from deadly cosmic and solar radiation. We wouldn't have plate tectonics, which is essential to recycle the nutrients that Earth's life needs to exist for a significant period of time. But people have also asked me, well, okay, we formed at that moment when uranium and thorium hit a peak abundance. Why the extra 4.5 billion years? Well, that's because stars are like human beings. They're unstable when they're young. They're unstable when they're old. They're maximally stable when they're middle age. But in the case of stars, they reach their maximum stability when they're perfectly middle age. Now, of all the stars that exist, stars that are the mass of the sun are the most stable. So stars more massive than the sun or less massive than the sun have greater flaring activity and radiate more deadly X-ray and ultraviolet radiation. And this particular graph here shows you what the flaring activity, which is also related to the X-ray and the ultraviolet radiation, how that changes over the history of the sun. And the y-axis, the activity level, that's logarithmic. When the sun was young, its flaring activity and X-ray radiation were more than 100,000 times more intense than it is today. But that little dotted line there shows you when the sun reaches its maximum stability phase. And it's when the sun is about 4.5 billion years old, which is where we are right now, which explains why you got God waiting 13.8 billion years before he creates human beings, because it takes that long to reach this period of extreme solar luminosity stability, where we got the uranium and thorium we need to protect us from deadly solar radiation and to ensure we have a planet that has both continents and oceans on its surface. And there are many other reasons why we have to be exactly that date after the cosmic creation event. This is just one. If you get the book, Why the Universe is the Way It Is, you'll see all kinds of graphs in there indicating that indeed we're in that unique narrow time window in which life is possible. This basically shows you when the quantity of coal and oil and natural gas reach a maximum. It's basically right at the present moment. And so there's several, in fact, that's one of the greatest evidences for supernatural intervention and design. There are over 15 very narrow time windows that are required for us human beings to exist and be able to launch global civilization. These windows are independent of one another, and yet they all simultaneously overlap at this particular time. Well, the fourth question that my quantum physicist friend on the airplane asked me is, well, why is the universe so incredibly dark? And, he, being a quantum physicist, had some knowledge of this. But just for you who may not be aware of this, the universe is predominantly made up of dark stuff. Dark energy, which is the energy that's embedded in the space surface of the universe. It's the energy that causes the space surface of the universe to expand at a more and more rapid rate as the universe gets older and older. That dark energy makes up about 71% of all the stuff of the universe. And then something called dark matter. This is matter that's made up of particles that do not strongly interact with photons. And so it's referred to as dark matter or exotic dark matter. And that makes up about 27 or 26% of all the stuff of the universe. And you got ordinary dark matter. This is matter made up of protons, neutrons, and electrons. But most of the ordinary matter in the universe radiates no light at all. It's basically these diffuse particles stretched out throughout the universe. And so the stuff that we astronomers see through our telescopes, the stars, the planets, the nebulae, the gas clouds, the dust clouds, that only makes up 0.27%. And so the universe is 99.73% dark stuff. And so the quantum physicist asked me, well, if there's a God, why such a tiny amount of the bodies that are essential for life, the stars and the planets and the nebulae, and why so much that's not? And I won't go into the details, but I was able to explain to him that in order for stars, planets, and nebulae to exist, it's crucial that the dark stuff, particularly the dark energy and the exotic dark matter, for all these stars and planets to exist so life is possible, it must be fine-tuned to within 1 part in 10 to the 122nd power. It actually ranks as the most spectacular measurable evidence we have in all the sciences for fine-tuning design. So alter the dark stuff by just 1 part in 10 to the 122nd power. No life of any kind would be possible anywhere, anytime in the universe. Now, to put this into context, we human beings are able to create and design. But in terms of the best examples we've been able to come up with over our thousands of years of existence of a fine-tuned design, the best we've been able to come up with is about 1 part and 10 to the 25 power. And what that tells us is that the one that designed the dark stuff so that life would be possible in the universe is at a minimum 10 to the 97 times more creative than we human beings, more intelligent than we human beings, more knowledgeable than we human beings, more technologically equipped than our human beings, or that many times better funded than our human beings, or bottom line, more powerful than us human beings. And the point I was making to my quantum physicist friend, this fine-tuning not only demonstrates a God must exist, it shows that there must be a personal God, because only a personal being can manifest the attributes of intelligence, knowledge, creativity, and power, and care to the degree that we're measuring here. And the fact that it's orders and orders and orders of magnitude greater than anything we human beings can manifest basically demonstrates we're not just dealing with a God that we see in all the religions of the world. This exclusively focuses on the God of the Bible. Because of all the religions of the world, it's only the God of the Bible that intervenes to such a high degree to ensure that we human beings have all the resources we need to fulfill the purpose for which God has indeed created us. Well, my quantum physicist friend on the airplane basically said, okay. He asked me a few other questions. I won't take the time to go into those, but I'll talk to you about his last question. He said, why so much cosmic entropy? And being a quantum physicist, he was aware that the entire universe is subject to this pervasive second law of thermodynamics, but that most of the entropy of the universe, the progression of useful energy to energy that has no use, not able to be used for work, resides in the universe. So he said, if there's a God, why has he subjected the universe and all of us to such an extremely high level, of decay? Or to put it in layman's language, why is the universe decaying at such an incredibly rapid rate? Well, I made the point that God had multiple purposes for creating the universe. If you read the book, Why the Universe is the Way It Is, you see that I describe 11 distinct purposes for God creating the universe. And those are only the ones we know of. There may be more. But probably most importantly, God designed the universe not only to provide a home for us human beings, which is really all the quantum physicist was thinking about. I says, no. More importantly, he designed the universe for the redemption of billions of human beings. And so that evil and suffering would be permanently eradicated. Being an atheist, he brought up the whole issue. Well, there's an all-powerful, all-loving God. Why so much evil and suffering? And my point was, God designed the universe, particularly with entropy and thermodynamics, so that God could actually use that entropy and thermodynamics to permanently eradicate evil and suffering, redeem human beings from evil and suffering, while at the same time, he enhances their free will. Because one of God's purposes in creating is to work with us free will human beings and magnify exponentially our capacity to experience and express love. And so our existence in this universe, for the few tens of thousands of years we exist in this universe, is basically designed to prepare us for life in a new creation where our free will be exponentially enhanced to experience love and to express love. But for that to be a safe environment for all of us, it's crucial that evil be completely eradicated once and for all. And my quantum physicist said, well, how is God going to pull that off? And so that led into a discussion that lasted about 40 minutes. I'll try to condense it here for you. basically making the point, this is a biblical statement. You see it in Ecclesiastes, you see it in Romans, that the entire universe has been subject to this pervasive law of decay. And there's some certain benefits from this law of decay. Number one, it's optimal for allowing the formation of stars and planets. And as a quantum physicist, the guy sitting beside me on the airplane was well aware, unless you got a very high level of entropy, stars and planets won't even form. But if it's too high, they won't form. If it's too low, they won't form. It must be fine-tuned. So it's one reason why we see the level of decay in the universe that we do. And I said, well, it also applies to what we see here on our planet Earth, that the very high level of decay that exists throughout the universe actually allows plants to produce food and allows animals to digest their food to perform work. So again, if we lived in a universe with a lower rate of decay, plants wouldn't be able to produce the food we would need, and we wouldn't be able to digest that food. And again, it's fine-tuned. Make the rate of decay very slightly greater or very slightly less than these two things simply would not be possible. But it's also optimized for the restraint of evil. So there's a physical reason why we see the fine-tuning of the laws of thermodynamics, but there's a spiritual reason. These laws of thermodynamics, not just thermodynamics, it also involves gravity and electromagnetism and the strong and weak nuclear force. All the fundamental forces of physics are optimally designed in a very exquisite way to be a tool in God's hand to restrain the expression of evil and eventually to eradicate evil, while God enhances our free will capability to express and experience love. And it's also optimized to prepare humans for their future careers in the new creation. And we're told in the Bible, for example, that we are in this present universe to be trained. Think of it as a college course you take. Students go to universities to take courses to prepare them for a future career that you can't undertake unless you go through all the training that you experience in these college courses. And one thing I was joking about with the quantum physicist said, like you, I've been both a student and a professor, and my role as a professor is to make my students suffer. If I don't make them suffer, they're not going to get the training that they need to be prepared for the future careers. But it's important as a professor that I fine-tune the suffering. Too much will discourage my students. Too little will not adequately prepare them. And I also noted it's my best students that really relish the suffering I take them through because they see how it's going to prepare them for their future career. And I think it's not just non-Christians. I think Christians also struggle over this. Why? Because we don't have a clear enough perspective on what our careers will be in the new creation. We're told that we're going to be ruling over what God creates in new creation. He hasn't told us what he's going to create, but he says you're going to be the administrators, the magistrates, the rulers, and the teachers over what I create. And he also says, I'm going to be putting you in charge of the angels. You'll be instructing and teaching the angels. You say, how is that possible? The angels are greater than us. Yes, they are, far more powerful than us, but we're different in one important context. We experience the grace of God. They observe the grace of God working through us. And it's because of our experience of the grace of God that we're going to be equipped to be able to train and educate and govern the angels and whatever else God creates in the new creation. So we're being prepared. Well, my friend on the airplane said, exactly how does this decay work in such a way to restrain evil and to eventually eradicate evil? I said, well, notice that the decay rate is not so high as to discourage productive work. I mean, everything we put our hands to immediately begins to decay, but it decays slowly enough that it doesn't discourage us from productive work. So we build homes, we build buildings, we write books, we take care of our backyard in spite of the fact that whatever we do undergoes decay. But it's slow enough that we don't get discouraged. But it's rapid enough that human sin does not go unrestrained. Now, this is all explained in the 3rd chapter of the Bible, Genesis chapter 3. The moment that our original parents, Adam and Eve, decided to rebel against God and directly experience evil, was God's intent that he would train and instruct us about evil, but humans instead chose to directly experience evil. And because of that, God said, well, from now on, there will be consequences to the sin that you commit. In proportion to the sin that you commit, you're going to experience more pain, more work, and as you see in Ecclesiastes, more wasted time. And, as I look at Genesis chapter 3, it talks about how Adam will have to work harder and Eve will experience more pain. But actually, if you look at the larger context, he's basically saying this is going to happen to every human being. And yes, the woman goes through more pain in childbirth. And my own wife went through 2 very painful childbirths and giving birth to our sons. She's not a big woman. Our sons are, they're huge. They're big men. But she told me many years later, the greatest pain in childbirth is watching what happens to your children as they begin to experience sin through their own free will choices. That's the most painful part of being a mother and a father. And I have to agree with her. Even though I didn't experience that pain in childbirth, although being present in the delivery room, I got to see the pain my wife went through, and of course that affected me as well. But the whole point is that we are biologically designed, thanks to the laws of physics, that none of us enjoys extra pain, extra work, gratuitous pain, and wasted time. And so because of that, we are motivated to avoid sin, if for no other reason, to avoid extra pain, work, and wasted time. And the process, we discover we need help, that we're not capable. We don't have the resources of being able to avoid the practice of sin and evil entirely. But realizing as we look at the creation, there's a God out there that clearly is very powerful, very intelligent and knowledgeable, and very caring and loving. And because of his great care and love and great power, he must have provided a way to deliver us from what we can't deliver ourselves. So the laws of physics are actually designed to motivate us to go to God to do for us what we can't do for ourselves. So right there we see in the early chapters of Genesis and the laws of physics, the basis of the gospel message. Now you can read about this in much more detail in my book, Why the Universe is the Way It Is. Again, you can get a free chapter at reasons.org. And we also have a DVD called Journey Toward Creation, which goes into this in some detail. We now have it available in 11 different languages. I'm not sure if Afrikaans is in there, but I do know that Russian, Mandarin, French, German. Matter of fact, what was fun is at the end of the flight, this quantum physicist turned to me and said, I've asked you these 8 questions, and I know you're an astrophysicist, but why do you have such well-prepared answers to the questions I've been asking? I said, well, you're not the first one to ask these questions of me. I've been asked these questions frequently, and it motivated me to write a book. And he said, yeah. And I said, your 8 questions, they're actually in my book. They're the chapter titles of my book. And he said, you got to be kidding me. He says, he actually said he didn't believe me. And I had my briefcase there, and I had only 2 items left. I always give away items when I'm on the road traveling, but I only had 2 left because I was headed home. But one of those items was this book, Why the Universe is the Way It Is. So I gave it to him. He looked at the table of contents and says, those are my 8 questions. Moreover, they're my 8 questions in the order I asked them to you. And I was actually able to give him a copy of the book. He was grateful for that. He said, do you have anything in German? And again, I had only one other item, and it was this item, Journey Toward Creation. I said, yeah, it's actually there in German as well. So he took that with him. And what was also fun was as we were walking towards baggage claim, he said, I've just calculated the probability that a Canadian astrophysicist who's a Christian, who never flies first class, would be seated on an airplane with a quantum physicist from Germany who's an atheist that likewise never flies first class. So it's less than 1 chance in 2 billion. Says, I know what happened today was not an accident. That's basically the point of the verse I shared at the beginning. If you will prepare good reasons for the hope you have within you, you will see God doing supernatural things to bring people to you, to hear and respond to those good reasons. And one of the things I document in my book, Always Be Ready, I share all kinds of stories I've had encountering people in airports, in the university plazas, on airplanes. And with airplane travel and airports, over half the conversations I've had with strangers have been with people that either have a doctoral degree in science or a doctoral degree in theology. And we all know that doesn't make up 50% of the flying American public. But God knows who I am, He knows who they are, and He brings us together. God will do the same for you. Whatever you prepare in the way of good reasons, God will use you, your background, your training, providing that you're prepared to share those reasons with gentleness, respect, and a clear conscience. You will see God doing supernatural things for you, just like you see recorded in the book of Acts, just like you see recorded in my book and other books that Christians have written. So with that, I'm going to stop the share feature, and we'll spend the rest of the time taking your questions.
Thank you, Dr. Ross. That was excellent. Thank you for that presentation. I'm going to start off here with the first question. Is it possible that other life exists somewhere else in the universe? And if so, is there a chance that we will ever find it?
Well, I've been on public record since the 1980s that we will find the remains of life on every solar system body except for the sun. And the best place to find that will be the moon. And the reason why we're going to find the remains of life on all these solar system bodies is that Earth has been pounded with meteoroids for billions of years. And the bigger ones cause the export of Earth's soil to be distributed throughout the solar system. So, for example, on the surface of the moon, an estimated 20,000 kilograms of Earth's soil exists for every 100 square kilometers of the moon's surface. So I got to speak at NASA Houston saying, we need to go back to the moon, but go back with a different mission. Let's recover that Earth-transported soil, and in that soil, we will find the remains of Earth's first life. I know you got Fuzz Rana coming to speak on the origin of life, and what he will share with you, we do not have the fossils of Earth's first life here on planet Earth. Earth's geology has destroyed them, but the moon has virtually no geological activity. We will find the fossils of Earth's first life in pristine form on the surface of the moon and see who got it right. The atheists or the atheists or the theists. We both have very different models on what Earth's first life should look like. But it'll also be on Mars. On the other hand, once you look beyond our solar system, all we see are conditions that are hostile for the existence of life. Some of my astronomy peers think, well, maybe we'll find a planet where a simple bacterium could exist for a year or two. But as far as finding advanced life, they say, yeah, everywhere we look, we see conditions that are hostile for advanced life. If we ever do find it, it'll be evidence that God created and designed a planet just like ours. But right now, I can tell you, we don't even see a galaxy that's sufficiently like ours that it could be a candidate for advanced life. And we don't see any stars in our galaxy that would be a candidate to have a planet orbiting about it. And when NASA talks about how they found 40 billion habitable planets in our galaxy, that's their estimated calculation, all they're looking at is how many planets are in the liquid water habitable zone. If you go to our reasons.org website, there are 13 different planetary habitable zones that a planet must exist in order to be habitable. And of all the planets we've been able to observe, we've now found almost 4,400 planets outside of the solar system. And of all those planets, we've yet to find one that exists in even 3 of those habitable zones, let alone all 13. So right now, there's only one planet that we've found that simultaneously exists in all 13 habitable zones. And people get, your viewers get only one guess as to which that planet is.
So, but I mean, that's not really the picture that's always being painted by popular media. It sounds like we're just almost one step away from discovering life under a rock on Mars or something.
Well, that's because they're looking at the easiest, the widest of the planetary habitable zones. That's the liquid water habitable zone. But for life to exist, it must also exist in the ultraviolet habitable zone, which is much narrower, and you won't get life unless these 2 zones overlap. And just for those 2 characteristics, that rules out 98% of all the planets we discovered. Only 2% reside in both habitable zones. And when you look at the other habitable zones, basically you discover you're down to just one planet.
Okay. All right. So here's another question among the same lines. A popular remark from many is that given the size of the universe, it's highly unlikely that we are alone in our universe. How would you respond to that?
Well, I've got a book coming out next year. It's written, but is going through the editorial process, where we basically are able to look at clusters of galaxies, superclusters of galaxies, and galaxies at great distances. And within the observable universe, what we're discovering is there's only one supercluster of galaxies that has the characteristics that allows advanced life to exist. And that's the Laniakea super galaxy cluster, the one that we're in. And of all the clusters within that Laniakea supercluster, only our local group has the characteristics that would permit the advanced life to exist. And within our local group, we have only one galaxy as a candidate. And again, you look at all the stars within our Milky Way galaxy. We haven't observed them all, but we have observed hundreds of millions. And of those hundreds of millions, only one star has the capacity to sustain advanced life. So I'm saying we haven't ruled it out entirely, but everywhere we look, we see conditions that are hostile for advanced life. Now, if we're talking bacterial life, the criteria are not nearly as stringent. That possibility still exists. And I'm open to the idea that maybe God created another planet or Milky Way galaxy in which advanced life exists. But so far, we've found no star that would be a candidate.
Okay. Another question. How do we know that God is actually the cause of the universe? With the Big Bang, we hit an event horizon beyond which we have no knowledge of what happened. So is it therefore more reasonable to remain agnostic?
Well, it's a good question. And it was actually a theoretical physicist in South Africa, along with, that was, I'm trying to think of his name. His first name was George. And 2 physicists, Stephen Hawking and Roger Penrose in England, that produced the first of the space-time theorems. And today we got over 30 of those space-time theorems. And basically what those theorems prove is that space and time have a beginning, and there must be a causal agent beyond space and time that created our universe of matter, energy, space, and time. And in my talk, I shared with the fact that we're not just talking deism. The space-time theorems prove that there must be a causal agent beyond space and time that created matter, energy, space, and time. So it establishes that there must be a God beyond space and time. The fine-tuning I talked about tells us that that God must be a personal being. And then what I ended up with about the decay and how that's designed to eradicate sin and evil, this shows us that the God is not only just a personal being, but a redeeming being, which means we're dealing with the God of the Bible. So yeah, it's more than just agnosticism or deism. But because of the space-time theorems, my peers in physics and astronomy are predominantly deists.
Okay. So, is the evidence that you have presented tonight, Dr. Ross, widely acknowledged by most scholars in the field? And if so, why do you think would some scholars still remain agnostic or skeptical? I mean, if it's so overwhelming or strong, why don't they come to the same conclusions as you do?
That's a very good question, and the facts that I presented are well accepted in the scientific community. So yeah, I mean, the Big Bang creation model, you'll find very few astronomers and physicists that would dispute that as being a fact. Likewise, the space-time theorems, the fine-tuning of the universe is universally accepted. Although most of my peers have not really looked any deeper than the fine-tuning of the universe. What we've been busy doing at Reasons to Believe is saying it's not just the universe as a whole that's fine-tuned. It's not just the laws of physics that are fine-tuned. Our galaxy cluster is fine-tuned. Our galaxy is fine-tuned. Our planetary system is fine-tuned. No matter what size scale you look at, all the way down to fundamental particles, we see this fine-tuning. So most of my peers have not really taken the time to dig that deep, but they do recognize the universe as a whole is fine-tuned. But one of the things I've noticed attending scientific meetings is that most of my peers will identify themselves as either agnostics or atheists or deists. But what I've discovered is they're really default atheists and agnostics and deists. When I talk to them, I've discovered they really haven't taken any time to look at the philosophical implications of what we all agree are factual truths about the universe. They're so consumed by their scientific research, they don't take the time to dig into the philosophy or the theology. In fact, another of them admitted to me that their scientific research is like an addicting video game. There's such a thrill in making these scientific discoveries that it consumes them. They don't think about anything else. And so,
conclusions.
Yeah, so I would ask them questions. Have you ever thought about death? No. Have you ever thought about that there might be purpose beyond the universe? No. Have you ever thought about the fact there might be some ultimate purpose in your life? No. They've never really taken the time to think about the most important issues of life. Or as I've shared with many of them, you're violating the Sabbath. The principle of the Sabbath is to take regular time out of your busy work to focus on the most important issues of life. And yes, your work might be very thrilling and all engaging, but you need to take regular time aside. And what I find is that opens a door. I remember there's one famous atheist astrophysicist at MIT. When we talked to her about the fact that she was a default atheist, she basically hung around us and wanted to talk. It's like this is the first opportunity she had really had to engage in these ideas with someone that was a scientist like herself.
Okay. Thank you for that, Dr. Ross. Another question here. If we say that God caused the universe, isn't it committing the fallacy of equivocation with regards to the term cause? Because we take natural causes, we observe and then apply it to God, who produces a supernatural cause.
Okay, that's another frequently asked question. If God created the universe, who created God? If God's the cause of the universe, what's the cause of God? And, people who ask that question are failing to recognize that God's in a different category than we human beings or anything in his universe. What the space-time theorems tell us is that the universe and everything physical within it is constrained by the physics of the universe, the laws of physics, and the space-time dimensions of the universe. Now, what the space-time theorems tell us is there's a causal agent who created time, who created the time dimension of our universe. And by definition, time is that dimension in which cause and effect phenomena occur. Well, God is capable of temporal experiences before he created cosmic time. I mean, the very fact that time is created establishes that. So you could actually think of it as, say, God dwelling in the equivalent of a second dimension of time. And if God dwells in the equivalent of two or more dimensions of time, then there is no need for him to have a beginning or a cause in our time dimension. This is something that's unique to the Christian faith and Judaism, is this idea that God has no beginning, no ending. He's not created. He's always existed. And that falls out of the fact that he has the power to create space-time dimensions at will. So the bottom line is he's in a completely different category than we are. Now, if you want to see this brought out in detail, mathematically and philosophically, I do that in my book, Beyond the Cosmos, third edition. And again, people can get a free chapter at reasons.org/Ross.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Ross. You've mentioned now why is the universe so old? So we have a question here on the age of the universe. So how do we know the universe is as old as it is? Is there more than one way that we can know this and get to the same answer?
Yes, there's about a dozen different ways. Most lay people think we astronomers calculate the age of the universe through radiometric dating. It turns out of all a dozen methods we have, that does give us a date for the age of the universe, but it's the least accurate of the dating tools that we use. So it does agree that it's about 14 billion years old, but the error bar is about plus or minus 1 billion. We have other methods where we get the most accurate date for the age of the universe is through looking at the sizes of the hot and cold spots and maps of the cosmic background radiation. That's the radiation left over from the cosmic creation event. And the most accurate dates have come from the Planck map and the 9-year W map of the cosmic background radiation. But we also get an accurate date by looking at the rate at which the universe expands throughout cosmic time and the spreading apart of the galaxies and the stars. Both of those methods give us a date that's accurate to about 1%. Matter of fact, the date that you get from the maps of the cosmic background radiation are accurate to better than 1% precision. Now, where radiometric dating really helps is giving us an accurate date for the age of the Earth. There, you get a date of 4.5662 billion years, and the error bar is as small as 0.0001 billion. So that's where you get a really accurate date from radiometric dating. But for the universe, we got other methods that are better, and all of them are described in my book, The Creator and the Cosmos, 4th edition. I actually explain to you how each method works, and the error bar in each method, and they all agree.
Okay, thank you for that. Okay, one more. How do we get past Hume's problem of induction? It was one of his critiques of the arguments for God's existence, because we cannot have enough data to come to an even probable conclusion of God's existence.
Well, we're a little bit past the times of David Hume. We have a lot more data today. And really, the core of his argument was, you're basically using an analogy, and it's an analogy I use, where I compared the fine-tuning capability of us free will human beings with the fine-tuning capability of the causal agent of the universe. And David Hume argued that those analogies were not close enough. You may have heard that he was a critic of William Paley's watchmaker argument, and basically was saying a watch is not a good analogy for a living organism. Well, today we know, and you're going to hear this from my colleague Buzz Rana, is that the watch analogy is very good for molecules within the living cell. This living cell is far more complicated than anything we see operating within a watch. But the watch analogy is very good for specific molecules inside the cell. And it's not the only analogy we see. We see rotary engine analogies inside the cell. We see piston engine, just like our gasoline motors that drive our automobiles. We see analogies to that inside the cell. The difference is these complex machines we see inside the cell, they're better than the machines we human beings design. So it's basically making the same point I was making in my talk. Whoever the creator is, he's way more intelligent and knowledgeable and creative and more powerful than we human beings. And so in the days of David Hume, I could see the point that the analogies weren't that similar. Today, we got highly similar analogies. And it's not just one analogy. We see it all over the place.
Okay. Okay, one last question here. See, our time is running out. So I guess we will touch on this question when we speak to Jeff as well. Doesn't the multiverse undercut the fine-tuning argument you have presented?
Well, Jeff is going to give you a really detailed answer to that question. I offer like a 5-page response in my book, The Creator and the Cosmos, 4th edition. But I begin by citing Leonard Susskind. He's an atheist theoretical physicist. And he basically wrote a short article saying, we atheists have got to stop using the multiverse. It's a bad argument for atheism. And just to give people some background, the multiverse is the idea there's not just one universe, there's an infinite number of universes. Moreover, they're not all the same. Each one is different. And so if you got an infinite number of universes where all of them are different from every other one, then the fine-tuning we observe in our universe could be the product of pure chance. So they're appealing to chance. But what Leonard Susskind said is, you're basically appealing to this infinity to eliminate fine-tuning design by God, but it simultaneously eliminates fine-tuning design by human beings. And he stopped at that. I give an analogy in The Creator and the Cosmos, saying if you've got an infinite number of universes where they're all different, you're going to have an infinite number of planets, like planet Earth, with an infinite variety of birch trees. And birch trees peel white pieces of bark. But if you've got an infinite variety of species of birch trees, you're going to have one species that will peel rectangular pieces of white bark that are really thin, that measure the size of A4 paper that you use there. And they will fall on soils that have random chemicals in them. And those chemicals inevitably are going to imprint markings on those pieces of white birch. And you're going to find in an infinite number of universes enough pieces of those white pieces of birch bark that will be identical to everything you see imprinted on every research paper published by every research scientist. So when you read the scientific literature that did not come from the minds of scientists, the multiverse did it. So you're basically being philosophically inconsistent. But I also make a positive appeal. I say one of the ways we can put the multiverse from an atheistic perspective to a test, let's examine the universe in more detail than we've examined it so far. If the atheists are right, we're eventually going to find a point where the evidence for fine-tuning design goes down rather than up. But the testimony of the past 100 years, it's always gone up, and it's always gone up exponentially as we learn more and more about the universe, which argues there's a mind behind the universe. It's not the multiverse. So we got a negative argument against the atheist model, and we got a positive argument. And what Jeff is going to share with you is the multiverse doesn't violate Christian theology. We don't know how many universes God made or how he structured them. But the only way you can make the multiverse philosophically consistent is to put it into a Christian worldview. If you put it into a non-Christian worldview, these multiverse models are fraught with interior conflicts and contradictions, like the one that Leonard Susskind mentioned. And so you can't escape them. Moreover, no matter what multiverse model you look at, they're subject to the space-time theorems. So at best the multiverse does is it eliminates theism. It does not eliminate deism. You still got a God behind the universe. But I'm with Leonard Susskind on this. The multiverse from an atheistic worldview perspective is contradictory.
Okay, thank you so much. I want to be sensitive to your time and also to our viewers' time. So thank you so much, Dr. Ross, for this opportunity. It was really excellent having this time with you. And yes, for all our YouTube watchers, this video will also be, it will remain on YouTube. So you'll be able to watch it online further, and you'll be able to send it on to your friends as well. And yes, I want to say good night, Dr. Ross, and good night to everyone else. And hope to speak to you soon again.
Well, it's been my pleasure. And we'll be happy to provide a link to your recording.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Ross.
All right.
All right. Have a good evening.